Hello, and this is going to be a case study on the restoration of the Buffalo River, which is located in the city of Buffalo, and this was studied by Trent Bell. Here are some case study questions to keep in mind as we go through the video. First one is, in what ways does the community surrounding the Buffalo River benefit from its restoration? What is going to be an ongoing problem that is difficult to address that is occurring at the Buffalo River? What is the main source of pollution that occurred in the Buffalo River? And what has been done to combat that? And why would restoring the watersheds of the Buffalo River help with the restoration efforts of the actual river? So now we're going to talk about the local oxbow wetland, and that's located in West Seneca, New York, and it is part of the watershed of the Buffalo River. In 2009, Erie IGERT trainees began collaborating with Buffalo Niagara Riverkeeper, the BNRK, and the West Seneca Environmental Commission on a project to protect and restore a local oxbow wetland in West Seneca, New York. But wetlands are an important part of the watershed as they provide habitat for a diversity of plants and animals, and they absorb and store storm runoff, and they filter nutrients and pollutants, moderate stream temperatures, and improve stream water quality. The oxbow is located approximately 2 miles upstream from the industrialization of the Buffalo River area of concern, which I'll cover in the next slide more. And basically, so they're important because the wetlands, they drain into the creeks, and the creeks will go and drain into the river, and I'll cover that more in the next slide. So in the fall of 2009, 6 Erie trainees became involved in the restoration project at their Erie Ecosystem Restoration Practicum course. They donated over 1,000 hours in fieldwork and analysis of flora, fauna, soils, and groundwater. And next, they insisted in the removal of invasive plant species such as the Japanese knotweed and Phragmites in the spring of 2010. And they used a variety of test methods, including digging, repeated cutting, overplanting with selective, aggressive native species with high wildlife value. And it's up to the West Seneca town officials and residents to keep this place restored. It's for like long-term monitoring and management of the outbow. So it's up to the community, and it's up to the citizens that surround the area. Okay, this is going to be a video, and this is just showing you the watersheds of the Buffalo River. So you can see how we have the Cazenovia Creek right here, and that goes into the Buffalo River. And then we have the Buffalo Creek, which also flows into the Buffalo River. And there's multiple creeks that all drain into the Buffalo River. So its watershed is approximately 3 main creeks that go into the river, that flow into it. In the early to mid 1900s, the steel mills alongside the river would dump harmful toxic chemicals into the water. And these chemicals were absorbed into the sediment at the bottom of the river and rendered it practically lifeless. And this is one of the ways that the ecosystem was degraded. And this disturbance it became a big issue that needed to be addressed. The river was so polluted that it once caught on fire. And that is similar to the famous Cayuga River fire that occurred in Cleveland. And in 1987, the river was identified as an area of concern. Next, this has to do with my peer-reviewed journal article, which I'll cover in the reference slides. So, ship traffic disturbing the chemicals in the soil and uplifting these chemicals into the water. This is caused by the wake the ship generates, which causes uplift in the water column, thus making toxins that were once buried or settled to be suspended in the water and to travel upstream. Ship traffic also increased the levels of fecal coliform and total bacteria in the water. And this is going to be an ongoing issue because the river is used as a navigational route by ships to reach the Buffalo Harbor, so we're going to keep having the ship disturbance. And this is about what has been done to restore the Buffalo River, and there was actually a lot of different techniques they used. So they used navigational dredging. In 2011, the USACE received over $4.5 million in funds, and they were able to dredge out the backlog of contaminated sediment in the Federal Navigational Channel and meet the objectives of a cleaner and more navigatable river. And from 2011 and 2012, they removed approximately 550,000 psi of sediment. In 2000, this is going to do with environmental dredging. So in 2012, Honeywell voluntarily signed a cost-sharing agreement with the EPA, and they split it 50-50, $48.5 million. And basically what environmental dredging is what they paid for to do is so it's when you have dredging buckets and silk curtains, and they reduce suspended solids and residual contamination. So they dredged sediment, or the dredged sediment was placed directly into scows, and that's like a large vessel, like similar to a barge, and like sent to a confined disposal facility. And this material was disposed at appropriately licensed landfills. And now once you get rid of the material, you're going to need to add new material on, so this is where capping comes into play. Based on site conditions, the low water flow capping was an ideal remedy for a section of the city ship canal. Modeling determined that one single layer of clean material at a thickness of 5.5 feet would be effective at isolating chemical contamination. And approximately 65,000 psi of capping material was placed at the end of the city ship canal. Now we're going to go into the habitat restoration. I have a bunch of slides on this. So what is being done to restore the habitat of the Buffalo River? Habitat substrate material, as you can see at the bottom right picture, is sand mixed with gravel, and that is ideal for plant growth, and that was at all 5 of the areas, and I will show the areas after I go through these slides. 61 anchored root wad logs and log poles were installed at 4 of the 5 habitat areas to create fish habitat and sheltered planting areas. 12 porcupine cribs were placed in the city ship canal for fish shelter, and 3 cribs in each of 4 locations. And you can see the porcupine crib on the bottom right. And then 18 rock veins, which is at the top right, were installed at 3 of the 5 habitat areas to reduce erosion and encourage sedimentation for plant beds. Riprap was placed at the stormwater outfall areas within the restoration areas to also reduce erosion. And then 4 gravel spawning beds were created in the city ship canal using stones to encourage target fish species. And approximately 77,000 emergent and submerged plants were installed. And I have pictures demonstrating what these would look like. So now we're going to talk about the 5 areas where the restoration took place. So we have the Catherine Street Peninsula, the Buffalo Color Peninsula, and the Riverbend. We also have the Ohio Street shoreline and the city ship canal. And these were the 5 areas that we talked about before with the habitat restoration, and this is where this was targeted. This is Buffalo River Restoration Partnership, and this is a partnership with the US EPA, the US ACE, the DEC, the City of Buffalo, the Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper, and Honeywell, and they all teamed up to make the river become a beneficial environmental, economical, and community resource. Alright, now we're going to talk about the community benefits for the restoration of the Buffalo River. Buffalo residents and tourists, they now have a cleaner and deeper river to enjoy. The transformation has helped the river to become a beneficial environmental, economical, and community research. With a clean river and restored aquatic and surrounding terrestrial habitat of the river, the Buffalo River will be a more attractive place to see. There was a survey, and it was based on estimates of single-family homeowners willing to pay for a full cleanup of the AOC, and that was 2 to 3 times larger than the property value estimates were. And basically they proposed a 4% tax rate, and this would help to pay for the restoration of the river, and this would increase tax revenues, like a surplus of $4.7 million a year for the city. So now we're going to talk about the recreation. So if you have a nice river and it's clean, and everywhere around it, it's like you got just like a pretty aquatic habitat, and it looks nice, then you're going to end up attracting tourists, or you're going to attract people in the area. The aquatic habitat is restored, so you'll have opportunities for people to fish and kayak and other activities that normally didn't take place in the front of the city. And with these new recreation opportunities, this will create tourism and draw people into the city, an area which was at one point basically a rundown ghost town. With the increase of people in the area, businesses will be attracted to the area. Encore Golf recently just stated that they will be coming to the area, and on top of that, there are now breweries and rapid development in the area currently as a result of this restoration project. With the increase in businesses and the increased attraction to the area, residential property values would undoubtedly go up. This is a win-win for all involved, and so far this has been a success. Next, we're going to talk about the SER criteria, and this criteria was found on the SER website, and the criteria was arranged on a 1 to 5 star systems, and 5 stars being the most restored. And if you look at the top right, I showed the 3 criteria I've used, and I showed you which ones would be 5 stars and which ones would be 1 stars. So for the first one, the absence of threats, I gave that 4 stars in the scale. Adjacent areas are beginning to be managed or mitigated to an intermediate extent. The reason why it is not a 5 star in this category is because there is still a problem with ship traffic, and that problem will exist because it is a navigational channel, as we covered before. Species composition, I gave that 3 stars on the scale. A subset of key indigenous species establishing over substantial proportions of the site with no to low threat from undesirable species. And I picked 3 stars for this criteria because the surrounding area of the river is still generally industrial, and it's making it less of an ideal surrounding ecosystem. The natural animals and predators will not be present in the terrestrial ecosystem that surrounds the aquatic ecosystem, and this in turn will cause the aquatic ecosystem to not be completely natural. Physical conditions, I picked 3 stars also on this scale too, and I said that the substrate stabilized within the natural range in supporting growth of characteristic biota. The physical conditions of the river, they are within the natural range, and there is constant monitoring to be sure of that. There is all of those companies that we talked about in the partnership, they have a 5-year post-dredge, and they are going to be monitoring the water, just water quality and the species and all the work they did to make sure that what they did worked. So there's monitoring and stuff, so that's why I think it is in its natural range, and there is constant monitoring. And the river, still, it's not completely restored. It's not going to have characteristics that a natural, limited impacted, reference ecosystem would have. A reference ecosystem that is isolated in the, without human, impact. It doesn't have ships rolling through and spilling gasoline in the water, and it doesn't have industry spewing chemicals into the air that are not even 500 yards from the river. So that is one reason why I think that this is probably as good as the river is going to get, given that it is in a city, a metropolitan area. Now I'm just going to go over the case study questions and make sure that you got the answers. So in what ways does the surrounding community of the Buffalo River benefit from its restoration? So the surrounding community, there's going to be more tourism, increase in residential property values, there's going to be more recreational opportunities, and you're going to have more development of the area. What is going to be an ongoing problem that is difficult to address as occurring at the Buffalo River? The ship traffic and causing wakes and uplifting toxins that are into the stream. Can't really avoid that at this point. What is the main source of pollution that occurred in the Buffalo River, and what has been done to combat that? The main source of pollution came from the industry that put the toxins, and what has been done, environmental dredging, and then you have capping, everything that was covered on that slide. And why would restoring the watersheds of the Buffalo River help with the restoration efforts of the actual river? It's because the wetlands flow into the creeks flow into the river, so you want to be able to restore the surrounding areas that the water is going to go upstream, so you're going to want to make sure you get the problem there. And here are my references. In the article by Gary Pettibone, that is my peer-reviewed article. And that is it.